This is the kind of story that feels like a modern-day fable, a cautionary tale for anyone who has ever judged a book by its cover. While there are no official reports of this exact event happening, the story has become a legend in its own right, a viral what-if that speaks to a deeper truth about respect, power, and the kind of instant karma we all secretly love to see. It's a story about a moment of shocking disrespect and an absolutely catastrophic miscalculation. For gate agent Karen, it felt like a victory. A little surge of power in the noisy chaos of JFK's Terminal 4. She had just slapped a passenger, a woman who dared to question her. The sharp crack echoed for a moment, followed by a shocked, sudden quiet. But what Karen didn't know, as she stared down the woman holding a hand to her red cheek, was that the sting on her own palm was the beginning of the end. The end of her job, her career, and life as she knew it. Because the woman she just assaulted wasn't just another passenger. She was Abby Laurent, the silent, anonymous billionaire who owned the very airline Karen worked for. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a mistake of epic proportions. Section 1, The Spark. Just 10 minutes earlier, things at Gate B23 were the usual brand of organized chaos for a flight to Los Angeles. Abigail Laurent sat quietly, practically invisible in the crowd. She was in a simple gray hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, the picture of anonymity. That was the whole point. For years, Abigail had made a habit of flying commercial on her own airline, Stellara, at least once a quarter. She called them her ground truth trips. It was how she saw the real, unfiltered experience of her customers, a world away from the polished reports of her executive board. The boarding call for Flight 714 crackled over the intercom, the voice already dripping with irritation. It was Karen, a woman who seemed to run her gate like a personal kingdom. "We will now begin boarding Flight 714 to Los Angeles," she snapped. "Zone 1 only. Do not approach the gate if you are not in Zone 1. I will not repeat myself." Abigail, with her Zone 1 boarding pass, waited for the first rush to die down before getting in line. The trouble started when she held up her digital pass. At the same time, a man in a loud shirt pushed forward, waving a paper ticket. "That's my seat," he announced, pointing at Abigail's phone. "2B, I'm in 2B. Karen barely looked at Abigail, instead giving the man a sympathetic glance. She scanned his ticket. It beeped. She scanned Abigail's phone. It also beeped. A classic duplicate seat error, something that called for a bit of tact. Karen had none. Her eyes scanned Abigail's simple clothes, and she made a snap judgment. "Honey," Karen said, her voice full of condescension, "there seems to be a mistake. This seat belongs to this gentleman. These are premium seats for our most valued customers." Abigail stayed calm. "I understand there's a duplicate, but my boarding pass is valid. I'm a Diamond Medallion member. Could you check the system?" That loyalty status was Stellara's highest, a detail that should have been a major red flag for any agent. Karen scoffed. "A lot of people say they're Diamond Medallion. The system probably has a glitch." She didn't even look at her computer. She waved the man on. "Sir, you go ahead and board. I'll handle this." "Wait a minute," Abigail said, her voice still even but now with a firm edge. "I'm not trying to cause a problem, but I'm asking you to do your job and verify the seating with a supervisor." The word supervisor was the trigger. For Karen, it was a direct challenge. The crowd was watching now, phones subtly angled to record the drama. "I am the authority here," Karen snapped, her face flushing. "And I don't appreciate your tone. People like you are always trying to pull a fast one, thinking you can bully your way into a seat you didn't pay for." The ugly, prejudiced accusation hung in the air. Abigail had read the reports her own company had commissioned on the phenomenon of flying while black, and now, she was living it. "This has nothing to do with people like me," Abigail said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "It has to do with you refusing to solve a simple error. I am asking you one last time to call your supervisor. The man in the loud shirt chimed in, just listen to her and move along. Karen saw her chance for a final power move. You were asked to step aside. You refused. You are disrupting the boarding process. Her eyes narrowed. You need to be taught a lesson. And that's when she leaned forward and swung. The ugly sound of her palm hitting Abigail's cheek silenced the entire gate area. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Karen stood there, breathing hard, a smug, triumphant look on her face. She thought she'd won. She couldn't have been more wrong. Section 2, The Reveal. The silence that followed the slap was heavy. Abigail didn't scream. She didn't curse. She just stood there, calmly touching her cheek, her eyes locked on Karen. It was a calm that was far more terrifying than any shouting match. Karen, her voice a little shaky, tried to take back control. Are you going to move, or do I have to call security to have you removed for assaulting an airline employee? It was a pathetic lie, and everyone knew it. In that moment, something inside Abigail shifted. For 15 years, she had run her empire from the shadows, valuing her privacy above all else. But this wasn't a system flaw. This was a personal attack. And disrespect was a debt she always collected. She slowly lowered her hand, gave Karen one last, long look, and then pulled out her phone. She tapped the screen once, selecting a single name. Oh, here we go, Karen muttered to a coworker. Calling her boyfriend to complain. Abigail's voice was almost a whisper, but it cut through the tension like a knife. Marcus, it's me. A short pause. Code Indigo. JFK, Terminal 4, Gate B23. Activate it now. She listened for a moment, her eyes never leaving Karen. Yes, immediately. Ground the entire flight. And get Director Henderson on the line. I want him here in 5 minutes. She hung up. Code Indigo was a theoretical protocol, a corporate nuclear option for a catastrophic failure of company values. Karen had never heard of it. To her, it was just more nonsense. Then, the flight information screen above the gate changed. Flight 714, delayed. A few seconds later, it flashed again, Flight 714, grounded. Panic erupted. Karen stared at the screen in disbelief. This was impossible. She turned to her computer, only to find a message, access denied, security level 9 override in effect. Her hands started to shake. Level 9. She was a level 3. Only the top executives had that kind of clearance. Just then, 2 men in sharp suits moved through the crowd with an air of absolute authority, flanked by airport security. The man in the lead was Marcus Vance, the executive vice president of global operations. He walked directly to Abigail and bowed his head slightly. Ms. Laurent, he said, his voice a mix of horror and respect. I am so sorry. We received the code Indigo. The flight is grounded. At the name, Laurent, Karen's blood ran cold. The name was a company legend. The mythical, unseen founder and owner of Stellara Airlines. A figure of almost fictional power. And she was standing right here, in a hoodie, with a red mark on her cheek. The second man, Director Henderson, head of East Coast Operations, rushed up, his face pale with sweat. Ms. Laurent, he panted, I cannot express my profound apologies for whatever happened here. Abigail held up a hand, silencing them both. She turned to the stunned passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice now ringing with power. My name is Abigail Laurent. And I own this airline. Gasps swept through the crowd. Phones were now up, openly recording. First, I want to apologize for what you were forced to witness. This is not who we are. This is not what Stellara Airlines stands for. And I promise you, it will be dealt with. Her gaze then landed directly on the trembling, ashen-faced Karen. The power dynamic hadn't just shifted, it had been utterly destroyed. All of Abigail Laurent's attention was now on Karen, who looked like her entire world had just collapsed. "What is your name?" Abigail asked, her voice cold as ice. "KK Karen," she stammered. "Karen," Abigail repeated. "You placed your hands on a customer. You denied service based on your own ugly prejudice. You publicly humiliated a person for no reason. You, Karen, are the living, breathing embodiment of everything I have spent 15 years and billions of dollars trying to erase from my company." She then turned her icy gaze on the terrified director Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, this employee's access to all company properties is terminated, effective immediately. She will be escorted from the premises. Her final paycheck, with no severance, will be mailed to her. And she will be banned from flying with us, or any of our partner airlines, for life." Henderson nodded furiously, snapping his fingers at the security guards, who moved in on either side of the now sobbing Karen. "And you, Mr. Henderson," Abigail continued, "this happened on your watch. Your entire regional management team will be under a full review, starting tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. in my boardroom. Be prepared to justify your jobs." Henderson looked like he'd been slapped himself. He just managed a choked, "Yes, Ms. Laurent." As security led Karen away on her walk of shame, Abigail's eyes found the man in the loud shirt, who was trying to become one with the wall. "And that man," she said, pointing a finger. "The one who encouraged this behavior. Marcus, cancel his ticket. Full refund. He can find another way to Los Angeles. Stellara Airlines is not for him." Marcus nodded, already typing on his phone. "Consider it done, Ms. Laurent." The man's face went from smug to shocked, but one look from Abigail silenced any protest. The retribution was swift, total, and brutally efficient. Section 4, The Resolution. With the problem removed, Abigail turned back to the passengers, her expression softening. "Once again," she said, "I cannot apologize enough. This flight will not be proceeding to Los Angeles tonight. The aircraft and this gate are now a scene that needs to be processed, not for a crime, but for a corporate failure. However, you will not be abandoned. My personal aircraft, a Gulfstream 650, is being fueled on the tarmac. It seats 16. The first 16 passengers who wish to continue to Los Angeles tonight are welcome as my personal guests." A wave of excited chatter went through the crowd. "For everyone else," she continued, "my team is arranging for your accommodation at the Four Seasons, with all expenses covered. You will all be rebooked on the first available flights tomorrow morning, in first class. Furthermore, every single passenger on this flight will receive a $10,000 travel voucher and a $5,000 check, as compensation for the distress you have endured. This is not how we operate. But when we fail, we will own that failure completely." The gate, once a scene of anger, erupted in thunderous applause. The story, of course, went viral. Not just the slap, but the incredible, decisive, and generous response that followed. In the following days, Abigail Laurent stepped into the light. She held a press conference, not to make excuses, but to make promises. She spoke of the very real issue of flying while black and acknowledged that her experience, while shocking, was sadly not unique. She announced that what happened at Gate B23 would be a catalyst for real change. The Stellara Cares initiative was launched. Over 50 employees were dismissed after the internal review. The airline's entire customer service training was rebuilt from the ground up with civil rights organizations to focus on de-escalation and cultural sensitivity. An anonymous reporting system was created so no one would fear retaliation for speaking up again. The story of Karen the gate agent became a terrifying legend in the service industry, a reminder that the person you disrespect today might just be the one who owns the company tomorrow. But the real moral of the story is simpler: never, ever judge someone by their appearance. You never know the power they hold or the story they carry. True character is shown in how we treat each other, especially when we think no one important is watching.